Hello Gourd friends, welcome back. I have a fun little video planned for you today on making gourd whales. This is the first little whale that I made, and I had some plans for him which would require cutting him up into little pieces, and I didn't have the heart to do it because look at that face. These first whales that I made into narwhals. They're made with a banana gourd, and then I just used pieces of other gourd to cut out the tail and the fins. But at the last Gourd Fest that I went to in Pennsylvania, I found these cute little chubby banana gourds. So I think I'm going to make these into a little sperm whale family because I think their shape kind of reminds me of a sperm whale. And I mean, look at them. Can you imagine it? They're just adorable. So I am just going to walk you through and demonstrate how I create these little whales. They're not really that hard to do, but there's just some little things that I've learned along the way from trial and error, and you can just see how I make them. The first thing that I'm going to do is to make a pattern for the tail and the fins. Now, these gourds are kind of similar in size. No one's a little bit bigger, but I think I can stick with the same size tail and fins for each one. So I'm just going to make one pattern and reuse it. So I did a little sketch out of what the shape of a sperm whale tail is, and this is a little bit different from the narwhal tail, so that's what I researched that, and it's a little bit straighter, and the side flippers are a little bit smaller, so that's what I am going to be going by as my guide. And I'm going to use one of my gourds as a little bit of a gauge for size, and I'm just going to eyeball it here. So here's my center. And I want to make a space for where I'm going to be attaching the tail. And for the flippers, they're just a shape kind of like this. Now let's see if that's a good size. I think that'll be a good size. And I'm just making a pattern so that they are all the same and I don't have a lot of variation between right and lefts. Now I'm going to cut these out, and what I'm going to do is just kind of cut this out loosely. I want both sides to be symmetrical, so even though I drew both sides of the tail, I'm only going to cut it like this. I'm folding it in half and then cutting out my shape. And I'm just kind of going to put a little divot in there since that's going to vary. So now I have a symmetrical tail pattern that I can use on all three gourds. This is a great project for using up tops of gourds. So when you cut your gourd into a vase or a bowl and you have this leftover piece, you can either use them as a lid, but if you choose not to use it as a lid, it's great to save them for projects such as these. And you want your piece to have a fairly thick shell. If it's too thin, let's see, like this one is pretty thin. You don't want to work with that because the way I'm going to be attaching these, you need to have a little bit of a thicker shell in order to insert a dowel. Here I am using a mini jigsaw to cut out the pieces. and checking the fit. Looks pretty good so far. Now that the pieces are cut out, I'm going to give them a good sanding all the way around, top and bottom and the sides. That way the gourd is smoothed out. Files are also helpful to smooth and shape the edges. Here I'm just sanding down the stem end on the gourd. Then refining and fitting the tails to the gourd, to the stem end, and checking for the fit and adjusting as needed. Using a small drill to cut holes for the dowels. And now I'm fitting the dowels and dry fitting the tail. I cut it down to size with a wire cutter. And now I'm just using a pair of pliers to round out that edge that I just cut. Dry fit the tail. And there you go, good fit. I'm using a wood glue here to glue it all together. Once this is glued together, it's not going to come apart. Make sure that's all good and cleaned up. Now I'll let these dry and then I'll move on to the flippers. The flippers are done the same exact way, just inserting the dowels and then gluing them together. And now I'll just let these dry at least overnight before I go on to the next step. The next step is sealing the joints with a 2-part epoxy clay. I'm putting on rubber gloves before I mix the 2 parts together. You want to make sure you use 2 different tools in each little tub. So there's the clay and then the hardener. And it's equal parts of each one. And then they get mixed together really, really well. I put a little bit of water there because that helps to smooth out the clay. And now that it's already mixed together, I can lose the rubber gloves. So I'm just taking a small amount and putting it on the joints of where I attached the tail. And I'll also be doing the same thing to the flippers. And here I'm just using a rubber-ended tool to help shape the clay. And that water does help to smooth it out a bit. And I do the exact same thing with the flippers. Now I'm going to let this dry for at least 24 hours, and then I'll take a little bit of sandpaper just to smooth out those edges a little bit more. Now here I am back in the studio, and I'm just penciling in the design on my gourd, and I decided once again, like my narwhals, to use a whimsical Celtic design on him. And now I'm using my wood burning pen to burn in the lines that I drew on with my pencil. And once the burning's done, I can go on to painting my whale. And a little bit of a pleasant distraction. Okay, so here I am. I'm just using some transparent acrylic green. Actually, I think I have a couple different greens mixed together. And I'm just painting in around all my Celtic knots. And since I want the front and belly of my whale to be white, I'm using a white transparent acrylic paint and just brushing it on. And here's another angle of painting the belly. I needed to do a couple of coats to get this covered the way I wanted it. And here's my finished whale. Thank you for watching, and I sure do hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you again next time. Have a gourd day.